You're not going to get those midweek games in maybe the Northern Cape or something like that where you win by 60 or 70 or 80 points.
I'm thinking 45. I wouldn't even be surprised to see 50 players on this tour. When we went in 1996, you had two teams. You had a midweek team and you had a test team.
This is the thing that we've been missing. This is the thing that people wanted, was the great treks to South Africa. Now we'll never see those where we went there or they came here for 2 or 3 months. That doesn't ever happen again. This is the closest we're ever going to get.
DSPN, the Devlin Sports Podcast Network.
DSPN. No Lachlan War till Wednesday. Tony Johnson from Sky Sport joins me again as he does every Monday. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got an NPC Final, all South Island. As you know, Otago versus Canterbury, and that's the first time since 2017 that's happened. South African tour confirmed as of last week. The fourth test, though, I think most of us think that that's going to be in London. Tony might have some extra information on that. And then we're going to separate out and talk about the Grand Slam, the history of the Grand Slam, and why it is so difficult to achieve this. Let us start, though, with those two semi-finals on the weekend. And they ended up being comfy scores, didn't they, for both the home sides?
Yeah, look, it was a fantastic weekend because not only did we have those two semi-finals in the NPC, but we also had 2 great days in the Heartland. And let's just tip the hats to that, because this is what I love about the Heartland. It gives every union in the country a chance for their day in the sun. And the sun was shining on Ashburton and it was shining on Oamaru. And in the end, we had a 100-point match at Mahino in Oamaru, and a great win for the Old Golds. And, of course, Mid-Canterbury, the Hammers, having slugged away into the wind. I thought that was going to be a comfortable win for them. And then a bit of a comeback in the second half from Thames Valley. And so it was a tight one in the end. But so they were 2 great days, and let's not forget those. And then, of course, semi-finals, they were both in the balance. Certainly nearing half-time in the game in Dunedin, but the way that Otago struck just before the break, I think that really broke the game. And they did pull away to win by a comfortable margin. Likewise, with Canterbury, you'd look at the score and you think they were absolutely dominant. They weren't, because they had to absorb a lot of pressure. But it was just that ability to do that, to defend and then counterpunch. And so what people have now to look forward to is the prospect, and if this is the sort of thing that spins your wheels, floats your boat, yes, it is a chance for a South Island sweep, because, well, it will be a South Island sweep because it's an all South Island final for the first time since the Mako went to Christchurch to take on Canterbury in 2017. Canterbury haven't won it since then.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It is amazing, because you tend to look at the Crusaders and you think that wherever they go, Canterbury goes too. Hasn't quite been the case. But obviously the 2 Heartland titles have gone to the South Island, one of them in Mid-Canterbury, one of them in North Otago, and now it's going to be either Otago and Canterbury in the final, and it should be a fantastic final too, between 2 teams that really have stood out for their consistency of performance all the way through.
Yeah, there's a moment in that game that I was watching because I had tried to watch a bit of the cricket as well, and then as soon as it started raining, I was like, I'm not watching anything. So I was watching the
New
rugby.
Zealand in October, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but there's a moment there where they had a chance to get 3 points, and I thought it almost cement the game. But Tom Christie decided to actually go for the try at that stage. And I thought it was just a really pivotal moment, and just an interesting moment from the mindset of that team, that they did score a try and they put them away. And whether they carry that same headspace into the final is going to be really interesting, isn't it? I just thought it was a call that, you don't see that often at that stage, because it wasn't as pragmatic as I thought Canterbury would be.
Well, I think this is just a reflection of how Tom Christie has matured as a player. He has been absolutely outstanding for Canterbury this year. And remember that Corey Kello, the other guy that they had vying for that number 7 jersey, or who was likely to play quite a lot of time there, got injured. So he's had to shoulder a heavy workload. But I just think he's honed his leadership instincts, knowing when the moment is right. Great captains, they get a sense that this is the moment that maybe we just deviate from the script or go for it, or maybe this is the time where we don't. We just knock over 3. And we saw that from Otago, by the way, who just kept chipping away. Even though they looked like they were in a comfortable position, they just kept taking the 3 points. Let's just keep the scoreboard ticking over. This is not about bonus points. This isn't about anything other than getting ourselves to the final. Yeah. So, Christie, to me, he's been outstanding, both his leadership, but also in the ways of great number sevens, just standing up when the moment demands. And I get back to that point that I made before, Martin, about the ability of Canterbury to absorb, and their defence has been outstanding, but then win a turnover and counterpunch.
Yeah.
And so often Christie is the guy in the middle of that, either making the steal or maybe popping up in a support role when they get into counter-attack mode. So it's a terrific template for success. And I'm sure that it's something that we'll see a lot of in the final. And it means that Otago, when they get into that attack zone, have to be patient and they have to be efficient and they have to support the ball carrier and not give Christie and his mates, and it's not just him. George Bell was another one, ripping the ball away time and time again from Hawke's Bay players in that game. You can't give them a chance either to win that relieving penalty or turn the ball over and counter-attack. And that, to me, will be one of the keys if Otago are to go there and win their first title since 1998, their first Premier title.
Yeah, that's another crazy stat, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, look, I just hope that it's a big full house down there because it's going to be an afternoon game from what we gather.
Yeah, it is.
So that makes a hell of a lot of sense.
Oh, it's brilliant.
Good on Sky for doing that too, because I just think it makes sense, doesn't it? To me, in this time of year, if you can get an afternoon game of rugby, hopefully they pack the house out.
Well, hopefully there'll be some travelling support for Otago.
Yeah.
They did really well too, by the way. Just a nod to the Otago Rugby Union for that game on Friday night. They knocked the ticket prices down. $20 to get in. $20 to get into that stadium and watch a top quality game of footy.
It's good price.
That's really good value. So hopefully there might be a few travellers because this is a chance. Imagine what a double that would be for Otago if they were able to go to Christchurch and win the Ranfurly Shield and then go back to Christchurch and win the NPC
Might
in
put the whole
same
David
year.
Latter thing to bed. Finally.
Oh, crazy.
After 30 years.
Yeah, look, he deserves to be remembered for much more
I
than
know.
that. Fantastic player. That was just a moment.
And it wasn't even him, though, was it?
It was just a moment in time, yeah. And look, I guess that's the story of the NPCs, littered with dotted with moments like that. But this is just a great setup. These are the two teams that deserve to be there.
Yep.
Absolutely, Hawke's Bay and Bay of Plenty deserve to be in the semi-finals. They competed well, but in the end, the class of those two teams that's been evident all season was the deciding factor.
South Africa, we have it confirmed now. We are going there next year. 4 tests, 4 games against URC sides. One of those tests is up north. We all think it's going to be at Twickenham, where that's the big cash cow. Is that the case?
Well, that was the talk early on. I just heard, and I don't know how much traction there is to this, but the mumble I'm hearing is that a possibility now is Croke Park in Dublin.
Not Aviva.
No.
Croke Park.
The old ground. That's just something that's been floating around.
Wow.
If it was the case, man, that would be a special occasion.
Well, you've got to get permission to do that because there's a lot of history that has taken place at that ground and a lot of geopolitical history as well, Tony.
Absolutely. So, there was a terrible thing that happened there during the uprising, and for a number of reasons it was decreed that is the headquarters of the GAA. Those uniquely Irish games, hurling and Gaelic football, and the deal always was nothing else, that rugby was seen as a British game and it wasn't to be played there. But of course, as things thawed out mercifully over the years, attitudes softened and changed, and when they rebuilt the Aviva into the magnificent stadium that it is today, they needed somewhere to go, and they reached an accord, and so Ireland took games there, and the first one was this incredible moment when they played England. And everyone wondered what it was going to be like. Do they even have national anthems? What do they do? And it was something quite incredible that happened. And then, of course, the All Blacks got to go there. Look, to me, it was an honour to be able to be there in that stadium. And when you go into the offices and you see photos up on the wall, and notice there was a photo of Michael Collins, for example.
Legendary name.
In Irish political history. You get a sense of just how important this is. And of course, that's one of the places where we first witnessed that incredible silence that the Irish took on when the opposition were kicking at goal.
Yeah.
And so quiet that our players, I know Stephen Donald found it at Thomond Park in Limerick, he found it almost unnerving. And there was a moment too when Dan Carter missed a shot at goal from about 35 metres out because someone in the back of the crowd had just called out something as he was coming, and it was really funny. And it did put him off.
Throw him, yeah.
Yeah. But look, so if that's the case, it'll be a fantastic opportunity to play at it is a sacred ground. Mm-hmm. It's more than, words like bastion and fortress and that, but this is sacred.
Yeah, so considered that.
Yeah, and then the rest of the tour, as you say, the 4 URC sides and the test matches, don't underestimate how tough this is going to be, Martin, to play those tests in consecutive weekends against such a powerful South African team. They are taking on something really, really grueling, really tough. The tours of South Africa have always been tough, but man, this is going to be some sort of challenge, particularly with the strength of the Springboks at the moment.
Look, I'm thinking 45, I wouldn't even be surprised to see 50 players on this tour. When we went in 1996, you had 2 teams. You had a midweek team and you had a test team. And as you say, you've got 3 consecutive weekends in South Africa, then 12-hour flight and up you go north. So effectively, you've got a midweek team that's playing 4 games. Now, they need 15 players plus the bench plus reserves for that team. And then you've got the All Blacks. It might actually be even as high as 55 to 60 players.
Who knows?
Who knows?
Yeah.
But the other thing I started, the podcast today by saying this, and, we can agree to disagree on this, but to me, that's where the development and experimentation comes in. The fact that you're going to have 2 teams and the fact that there is no way that All Black First 15 is going to play 4 consecutive test matches. You are going to have players interchanging, as we saw in 96 as well. So whether they become part of the All Black squad or whether there's almost 2 All Black squads, I think that there's plenty of opportunity for every player during that time. To me, the most important thing about this for All Black Rugby right now is to go on this Grand Slam and win these test matches, right? And then to go to South Africa and win that next year. And I know that we can get caught up and there's a Rugby World Cup in October 2027, but that's when it is, Tony.
Yeah, but
it's a year in the future. We've got Martin, a lot of games to play between now and then.
Okay.
This is important.
So you're saying it's all about winning?
I think this particular tour is, for sure.
Yeah, well, see, to me, it's about the restoration of one of the great traditions of the game. That's more important than anything in my mind, because this is the thing that we've been missing. This is the thing that people wanted, was the great treks to South Africa. Now, we'll never see those where we went there or they came here for 2 or 3 months. That doesn't ever happen again. This is the closest we're ever going to get. It was a bit of a risk to even do it because of the potential damage that it was going to do to the Sanzar Alliance and the Rugby Championship. And to me, that was probably the really positive thing that came out of last week, was the fact that the Rugby Championship is to stay intact for another 5 years. And what that means is that puts an end, at least for the medium term, of any of this talk of South Africa joining the Six Nations, which would have been catastrophic for rugby in the Southern Hemisphere if that had happened. Yeah. So to me, that's the most important thing. We restore one of the great traditions of the game, where South Africa comes here or we go to South Africa for a prolonged series of matches. And obviously, you're not going to get those midweek games in maybe the Northern Cape or something like that, where you win by 60 or 70 or 80 points, just for a little bit of light relief. It's going to be more like, taking on the traditional powerhouses of South African rugby. Back in the days, I think about the 1970 tour, when you came against Transvaal and they were full of Springboks or Orange Free State or Western Province.
Even the junior box were a hard game, weren't they?
Yeah. And so, to me, that's really important. You can debate all you like about how important the winning of it is, but to me, I'm just looking forward to the fact that we're seeing something here, that they've answered the call. People want to see this. They want to see the tours, and we get, I guess, both. We get, not only do we get the tours, but we get the retention of the Rugby Championship.
Yeah, that's really important.
Hugely important. And more than that, you get a full Rugby Championship in a World Cup year, and that is hugely significant. Because
it's always been truncated, hasn't it? It's always been reduced.
Not only that, but also the incoming Northern tours have ceased in World Cup year. Now, remember how England came down in 2003, beat the All Blacks,
went to Australia and won,
and then went on to win the World Cup. But since then, those incoming tours from the Northern Hemisphere teams have evaporated. and that's really affected the All Blacks' chances. South Africa, Australia, it hasn't helped their preparation, and so you have to have things like that game against the Springboks that they played, where the Springboks absolutely wiped the floor with the All Blacks as your lead up to the World Cup. Now you're going to get 2 test matches against South Africa, 2 against Australia, 2 against Argentina before going to the World Cup. Not only does that remove a disadvantage, it probably puts the Southern Hemisphere teams at quite a significant advantage.
Yeah, because our games are actually in the immediate couple of months before the tournament as opposed to the Six Nations. No, I totally agree with you on all of that. And also, I think it furthers my argument that I love the idea of these tours, and I love the idea that they're going to be every 4 years, that it's not just a one-off. But it was just I've read a lot of noise since it was announced last week that it's more about development, this tour, and it's more about experimenting with players, and it's more about building to a World Cup. I just don't get into that headspace, because I'm still in a headspace where I want the All Blacks to win today and tomorrow, and the World Cup to me in October 2027 takes care of itself because it's 2 years away. And to win a World Cup, the first and foremost thing you've got to have, Tony, is all your players fit and healthy. And you can't decide that 2 years out. So, to me, there will be so many names that go to South Africa. There's plenty of room for people to get, their opportunities, as I said, to play and to make the first 15 squad. But at the same time, just for our psyche, that we need to re-establish ourselves as a team that can go anywhere in the world and win these games. And I think that starts on this Grand Slam tour. And then South Africa is the next part of that. Because we're not going to get another World Cup here in New Zealand till who knows when. We're going to have to go
till never. Yeah.
Till never. So we're going to have to win these things overseas. And so, we've got to once again be that bombastic, rambunctious team that travels well. And this is what it's going to teach these players, I think, to win in hostile environments where the crowd's against you and all of those kind of things. The refereeing might be different. The grounds are different. All of these things. And that's an invaluable experience going to South Africa.
Yeah, and that's the experience that our players, New Zealand players, have been missing since South Africa's exit from Super Rugby. So, that is really important. And as I say, the more players they can expose. And let's not forget, though, when you're playing tests so close together like that, Rassie will be mixing and matching as well.
Yeah, of course. But I've been thinking about it, this idea of 4 players in every position. It sounds fanciful and it sounds great. And
it's necessary. You have to have strength in depth. And maybe putting a number on it like that kind of overplays it a
does,
wee
I
bit.
think. It sounds a bit silly, because what are you saying? That you're going to have 4 first fives, the quality of Pollard? No, you're not. You're not going to have Carter, Pollard, Wilkinson and Larkham as your first fives,
No, but you've still got to have players. I mean, look what happened in 2011. And that put the 4, that number 4 to the test totally.
Or 2007.
Dan Carter, Colin Slade, Aaron Cruden, Stephen Donald, who ended up kicking the winning penalty goal in the World Cup final. It is about developing depth. You have to have depth, because players will get injured,
they will
particularly.
Get injured. Yeah.
But what is also good about it is you do put in that you're in that scenario where you have to 3 games in a row or 4 games in a row, which is what you have to do to win a World Cup.
Yeah, consecutive weekends. And so that's what I like about it. That's, to me, the whole point about saying that I think it's about winning for the All Blacks, because you've got to go and you've got to win at a Rugby World Cup on 3 consecutive weekends.
I don't disagree with that necessarily. What I'm saying is that it's not just about winning.
No, I get
For
that.
you, it's just about winning. For me, it's more about re-establishing this great tradition without compromising the Rugby Championship. And I think they've actually come up with the best possible scenario there for the fans, but also for rugby in the Southern Hemisphere. Because otherwise, if the Rugby Championship had fallen apart, we would have been, New Zealand and South Africa would have sold Argentina and Australia short.
Oh, and not only that, when you look at the tournament this year, which has been probably the best tournament
it has been the
best of it, how can you then look at it and then go, we don't want that anymore?
I don't think that was ever going to happen. I think there was always going to be some sort of effort to keep all that going. But I'm just, the way they've worked it out, and it means that these tours, they'll take place once every 4 years, a bit like the Lions, so they remain special. Because the last thing you want
is for them to be every
happen.
2 years or something. I mean, you don't. I mean, look, the other thing is that means next year, do you just think about, I think what Scott Robertson said, 17 tests or something, because we've got the Nations Cup in there as well now.
Yeah.
And then this tour, then you've got the Rugby Championship.
Yeah.
And then you got more Nations Cup at the end of that.
Which is why
is that going to impact on Super Rugby? Are we now going to be resting players even more from Super Rugby before they play these matches?
Well, I hope not.
I hope not too.
No, I hope not. No, I don't think that'll be the case. But it does underline the importance of what's coming up ahead of us now, where the All Blacks are going away, but also the development 15 as well. That's going to be really important because that's going to be establishing your depth. And we know that there are a couple of players that we would have liked to have seen in one of those teams, and even more so now that this whole schedule's been confirmed. But so the next month or so is going to be really important because that's where they're starting to form their ideas about who the players are that are going away. And I think probably they might take about 40 players, 42, 43, something like that. That was the great success of 1996. That John Hart managed to convince that the rugby union, as it was known then, that I essentially want to take 2 teams. Now, of course, there was some toing and froing. And John Preston, for example, who was the hero, one of the heroes of Loftus,
Pretoria,
he was kind of suiting up for pretty much every game because he could play 9, he could play 10, and he could kick goals. And there were players dropping in and out, swapping over. Nibs Culhane stepped up into the All Black, the Test team sort of thing,
and did a great job.
Did a great job, but whether or not they go so far as to have a distinct Test team and the team,
they're going to have to play. The players are going to have to play before the first test. I mean, that's the thing. There's no question. They're going to have to play against one of the URC sides. You're not just going to take them over cold. So.
And it'd be interesting to know. We're talking about what the All Blacks are going to do. What's Russie going to do? Is he going to say to the Lions or to the Sharks, "No, you can't have those guys"? Of course, a lot of their players will be coming back in from Japan anyway, so it won't matter. Or the Northern Hemisphere. But that's all going to be part of the whole thing. And it was always part of the intrigue of going to South Africa back in the day. What's Danny Craven cooking up here? You've almost got that sort of scenario with, that Russie being the great protagonist that he is, the great coach that he is. There'll be some scheming going on about, who suits up. Or even when the All Blacks used to go to France and they used to play these
French selections,
which were either jam-packed full of Test players or jam-packed full of
guys just ready to smack
thugs.
You. Yeah, pretty much. Leave us a comment all about this. What do you think about this South African tour? And do you agree with me that it's just so imperative the All Blacks win? Also, Tony's comments as well about how good is it that we're going to have these back every 4 years.
DSPN.